Okay, well, thanks for staying with us, folks, and welcome for those joining us for this segment. My name's Nick. He's Joe. This is the Nick and Joe Show. He's in the center of the universe there in Ottawa, and I'm out here on the farm in the Ottawa Valley. What you're listening to is probably the best conservative talk show you'll ever hear all night long. Anyway, one of the topics I wanted to bring up, Joseph, was this idea. And it breaks my heart when I hear it because, like you, when I signed the line and joined the Navy all those years ago, we agreed to put on we were defending a nation. We were there at the pleasure of the Queen, and we were there to do whatever was required of us to defend the values and the principles that Canada stood for. And when I watch my brothers out west get increasingly frustrated because no one listens to them. They don't, and I'm talking about current leadership and even past leadership. This is not new. It goes all the way back to probably even before Pierre Elliott Trudeau with his national energy program. It's been increasingly hard. It gets increasingly harder for people who live out west to feel included in the day-to-day running of the country. We've had some Western prime ministers. We've had Stephen Harper. We've had, different Western politicians. But generally, the federal government in this country kind of looks at Alberta like, just keep shoveling out the money and you just be quiet and we know what we're doing. So therefore, we don't need you to tell us how to do things. And it's insulting because, first of all, for a lot of Canadians, Alberta carries the water when it comes to equalization payments. They get back a lot less than they ever put in. And you've got provinces on the other side of the country, like Quebec, who take out a lot more than they ever take out of it, a lot more than they ever put in. So, there's a lot of angst out there. And what I'm wondering about, especially in light of recent leadership, you have everything from the canceling the XL pipeline and how anemic the reaction was to that by Justin Trudeau, to just different instances where Western interests don't seem to matter to him. He doesn't want to do anything to make people who live out west in Alberta, Minnesota, God, I got the American states in my head. Alberta, Manitoba, the Western provinces, like full-fledged members of the family. And I wonder, because you hear about it more and more often, this sentiment, maybe it's time for the West to go its own way. And I do not want to see that. I like my country as it is. I don't want anybody to feel like they have to leave because they're being ignored. And at some point, you have to ask yourself, how much more can they take before they finally say, that's it, we're done, and begin the proceeds in whatever form that might take of saying, okay, this wedding's over, we want a divorce.
I think that they could take a whole lot more. But this is not, it's not, well, first of all, there's this new federal party out in the Western provinces. It's called the Maverick Party. Jay Hill, who's a former Reform member of Parliament, is the interim leader. And there are a number of old key Reform Party members that are involved. That's not so much that they want separation, is that they want to ensure that there's a voice for Western Canada in Parliament. And I have to tell you, I'm not entirely sure that I understand how they think that what they're going to say is going to be different from members of the Conservative caucus who are predominantly from the West at this point in time, who are not members of the government either, because it's the Liberals who are in government. So, and, I don't know. What's going to end up happening is that if you knock off a handful of Conservative members of Parliament, you're going to have a Liberal government. So from a strategic and tactical point of view, I'm not really sure that all of this works. But I want to move away from the the practical, the electoral equations for a minute and just talk about the whole idea of Western alienation, or what we in Canada talk about as being Western alienation. But, if we look down at our south of the border, for our listeners who are down in the States, the same thing is happening there, only in the States, it's not, so much Western alienation as it did, we could say, what's come to be known as the flyover states, okay? The heartland of the United States. What we really are seeing is a cultural war that's developing. And somebody said this to me the other day, and it really stuck. It really stuck. Because I've had people come to me and say, do you think there's going to be a civil war in the United States? And I go, no, I really don't. Come on, guys. There's a lot of tension. There's a lot of division there, and to a degree here in Canada, it's reflected here as well. I don't think there's going to be a civil war. But then this person said to me something that really stuck. Not a hot civil war, a cold civil war. And I thought, wow, that's a really interesting way of putting it. And when you think about it that way, I think we really are. We are in Western countries in the midst of the opening stages of a cold civil war. And I think that there's a great deal of benefit to looking at it that way, because, nobody wants to start picking up weapons and shooting at one another and all that stuff. But we really need to look at this as in not just a debate over left versus right or conservative versus liberal, but as a real conflict that requires hard choices, that requires some real putting our foot down and being willing to live with the consequences of taking a stand on certain issues. And I really think that term is applicable these days. And the sooner we come to terms with that, the sooner we start to organize ourselves and take action in order to defend what are, I think, the foundational principles of a free society. And in a kind of a paradoxical, ironic way, Nick, when people ask me, why am I a conservative? I tell them, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but not entirely so, that I'm a conservative because deep down, I'm a liberal. I'm a genuine liberal. I believe in genuine classical liberalism. What makes me a conservative is that I appreciate the what goes into defending and propping up and developing those institutions that are truly liberal and that truly represent a liberal approach to politics. And so I defend those values. I drive some of my Jewish friends and members of my family crazy when I remind them that Canada and the United States and other Western democracies are actually predominantly Christian. They're Christian. Canada's a Christian country, historically speaking. I know. Yes. Okay, we talk about Judeo-Christian. Thank you for throwing that bone to me and my people. Okay, the tribe. We appreciate it. Yes, Judeo-Christian. But the reality is the United States is a Christian country historically. Canada's a Christian country historically. And while that hasn't always been, the consequence of that has not always been the most smooth, generally speaking, I would say, and I'm speaking as a Jew, that has been, it's been beneficial, it's been very positive, and it's been good for my people. And I'm very happy that Canada is a Christian country, and I want it to remain a Christian country. Now, that doesn't mean that I want to force people to go to church or to accept a particular denomination. But what I want Christians to do is to mobilize and fight back against a concerted left-wing campaign to marginalize them and to quite frankly, to eradicate any vestige of the principles upon which their religion is based and upon which Western democracy is based. So there's my off-the-cuff rant.
Well, as usual, it's a great off-the-cuff rant, and I think that you're probably quite right about a cold civil war. I think it's not just the United States. By the way, I want to welcome Dreamland. He's from the States. Based on his comments, it sounds like he's out of New York State. He doesn't have much good to say about Mr. Cuomo. Oh, no, that was Marin who didn't have much to say, so I'm not sure where Dreamland is from. But nice to have you with us in the chat room. We're always glad to have our neighbors from the South join us. But I think that in our Western culture, maybe I'll broaden it out. When I say Christian values, I take the same kind of meaning as you do. Or when I say Judeo-Christian ethic, that doesn't. I'm not trying to put one over the other. That to me, that's a recognition that there's a commonality between the two faiths. I mean, there's some very important differences, but at its root really lie the Ten Commandments, and that's based on that, okay, is where we get our legal system and our political system and all that. That's what they mean by Christian ethics. And I know you know that, Joseph, but just for people who are a little confused by the term. Anyway, we are in the middle of a culture war. We have been for 2, 3, 4, 5,000 years. It's just now with technology, it spreads like wildfire really, really, far more quickly than it ever has in the past. And I think that's an unfortunate situation, because rather than having a situation, let's take the situation, the racial problems where that policeman was found guilty of killing that, I forget the name of the victim, of the person he had under arrest, that he was found guilty. If that situation had happened 100 years ago, it would have been a local issue. It would have been dealt with locally, and the rest of the country would not have been inflamed by that. So that's the difference, I think, and why it seems like everything's going so much faster now, and that a lot of people who have agendas to tear down everything that we have built up seem to be making great strides, because they have this powerful new tool called the internet and all the platforms that come with that to disseminate what I would call disinformation. You call it whatever you want to, but it's not accurate, or it's out of context, or it might even be accurate, but it's like what we were talking about sexual harassment before in the first segment. Does it really warrant the kind of attention it's getting in the sense that we're looking at it?
Well, Nick, all of the tools, all of the weapons that you're describing, that the left, I've used the term left very loosely here because you know how much I hate it, that terminology, but we'll use it for the sake of argument here. Every tool that the left has at its disposal to advance its agenda, we have at our disposal too. Now, what I think, forgive me, Nick, I'm going to be a little bit critical here. I think that how you just explained yourself at the beginning of your comments just now, I think are illustrative of the problem. Is that you want to refer to Western society, and I get it. I know exactly where you're going with that, but you do it almost apologetically.